Muslims are staging a day of rage around the world after Friday prayers this morning after Donald Trump officially recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Demonstrations have already taken place in Bangladesh, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Kashmir today, and hundreds of Palestinians clashed with Israeli security forces in the West Bank cities of Hebron, Bethlehem, and Ramallah. Protesters threw stones at Israeli troops, who responded with tear gas and rubber bullets, while huge crowds rallied outside Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque, a flashpoint site in the Holy City, and thousands have also taken to the streets in Gaza. About 12 Palestinians have been hurt by rubber-coated steel pellets and one by live fire, according to Red Crescent paramedics. Israeli authorities have deployed hundreds of extra police, while soldiers have had all leave cancelled in preparation for the unrest. In Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, protesters burnt an effigy of Trump outside the US embassy, while in Iran, hundreds rallied in the capital, Tehran, chanting "Death to America," and senior cleric Ayatollah Ahmad Khatami called on supporters to rage against Israel. Thousands also marched in Turkey as well as in Afghanistan, Jordan, Pakistan, Somalia, and Egypt, where campaigners vowed to sacrifice our blood and souls for Palestine. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said today that plans to move America's embassy to Jerusalem are unlikely to be acted on for at least 2 years. The Islamist group Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, called for a new intifada, or uprising, and 3 missiles were fired last night from the coastal territory into Israel. 2 fell short and the 3rd caused no damage, the Israeli military said, and warplanes and tanks were scrambled in response, striking 2 sites used by Hamas terrorizers in Gaza. On the West Bank, the more moderate Palestinian Authority ordered a general strike. Schools, universities and shops in Arab areas of Jerusalem were closed amid expectations that thousands of young people would take to the streets in anger today to battle soldiers and police. This morning, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital by the United States runs counter to common sense. This announcement runs counter to common sense, Lavrov told the news conference in Vienna. French President Emmanuel Macron has appealed for calm in the region. Speaking at a meeting to discuss Lebanon, Macron said Trump's decision should not add to the instability of the region. I'm issuing a call for calm and responsibility by everyone, which is essential for the efforts we are undertaking here. A so-called day of rage protests took place in Muslim countries around the world. Thousands of pro-Palestinian supporters marched after Friday prayers in Istanbul this morning. Chanting slogans including "Jerusalem is ours, and will remain so," and "Down with America." Down with Israel. The protesters marched after prayers at the Ottoman Fatih Mosque in the center of Istanbul, the correspondent added. Other protests were planned elsewhere in Istanbul and across Turkey on Friday. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has taken a strong line against the move and called an emergency summit meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC) on December 13th in Istanbul. Last year, Turkey and Israel ended a rift triggered by Israel's storming in 2010 of a Gaza-bound ship that left 10 Turkish activists dead and led to a downgrading of diplomatic ties. The two sides have since stepped up cooperation, particularly in energy, but Erdogan, who regards himself as a champion of the Palestinian cause, is still often bitterly critical of Israeli policy. Earlier today, Muslims in Indonesia and Malaysia protested outside the U.S. embassies. Kerry addressed Trump in a speech after handing a protest note to an embassy official, saying, "Mr. President, this is an illegal announcement." Trump has to understand that Jerusalem is not his to give, and the decision for whatever status of Jerusalem should not come from America, said the Al-Qaeda Hussein, a leader of the political party Bersatu. Nurul Hidayah Misari, a student, compared Jerusalem to the holy Muslim cities of Mecca and Medina in Saudi Arabia, saying it's as if those places were occupied as well. "That's our feeling." Neither Malaysia nor Indonesia has diplomatic ties with Israel, and both are strong supporters of Palestinians. The protesters marched from mosques to the heavily guarded U.S. Embassy in Jakarta, waving Palestinian and Indonesian flags. They burnt tires near the embassy, and photos of Trump and U.S. and Israeli flags in a similar rally in the cities of Bandar Aceh and Makassar. Another protest was held in Surabaya, Indonesia's second-largest city. Hundreds of Muslim Kashmiris also marched at several places in the main city of Srinagar and other parts of Indian-controlled Kashmir, chanting slogans "Down with America" and "Down with Israel." They burned U.S. and Israeli flags, while authorities imposed a curfew in old parts of Srinagar and disallowed Friday prayers at the city's main mosque for fear protests could morph into violent anti-India rallies. It follows widespread unrest across the region yesterday, with violence flaring at multiple points and angry demonstrators in Gaza burning Israeli and American flags and images of Mr. Trump. In Bethlehem, on the West Bank, tear gas was fired to dispel rioters along streets decorated with Christmas lights. On the outskirts of the Palestinian city of Ramallah yesterday, Israeli police fired tear gas and stun grenades at crowds of young men who were throwing stones and burning tires. The move followed the United Nations vote to partition Palestine on the basis of the British pledge known as the Balfour Declaration, that paved the way for a homeland for the Jewish people. Then, in 1967, during the Six-Day Arab-Israeli War, Israel annexed Arab-controlled East Jerusalem, including the Old City. Israel has claimed ever since that both parts of the city are its undivided capital. Why is Jerusalem so important to both sides? Chiefly because of its religious history. The Temple Mount in the Old City is the most sacred place in Judaism, the site of Solomon's temple said to have housed the Ark of the Covenant, and destroyed in 586 BC by King of Babylon. The site is also the third holiest shrine in Islam, known to Muslims as Haram al-Sharif, noble sanctuary. It was the scene of Prophet Muhammad's night journey ascension from earth to heaven in 621. The compound includes Islamic shrines, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The city is also sacred to Christians. Jesus attended a temple in the Old City and was crucified on a hill outside its walls. But it also has hugely important implications for the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. What has Donald Trump done, and why is his intervention so toxic? Until now, peacemakers have pursued the strategy that Jerusalem would be part of an overall negotiated settlement, with its status decided in the latter stages of peace talks, with agreement on both sides. But if America jumps to a conclusion on the city's status now, and takes Israel's side, many fear it will undermine the chances of a peace deal. It does not take much to spark violence in the Middle East. In 2000, The Second Intifada, 2 bloody years of Palestinian suicide bombings and Israeli military killings, started after a visit by the then leader of the Israeli opposition, Ariel Sharon, to the old city site. About a third of the people living in Jerusalem are Palestinians. An uneasy coexistence is lived out day to day, under the watchful eyes of clusters of armed Israeli police. Since 1967, Israel has built a dozen settlements, home to about 200,000 Jews, in East Jerusalem. These are considered illegal under international law, though Israel disputes this. Jerusalem is governed by a mayor and city council whose members are elected to 4-year terms. Palestinian Arabs living in East Jerusalem have the right to vote in Israeli elections, but most refuse to do so. How does Trump justify moving the U.S. Embassy? The U.S. Embassy is currently in Tel Aviv. To move it to Jerusalem would be a powerfully symbolic and inflammatory gesture in support of Israel and in defiance of Palestinians. But technically Trump has a legal framework. In 1995, amid lobbying from pro-Israel Americans, the Republican-controlled Congress passed a law, the Jerusalem Embassy Act, which instructs the president to move the embassy. So no Arab regime can risk provoking internal political upheaval by appearing to side with the U.S. Mr. Trump could now have catastrophically undermined his own Middle East strategy of trying to forge peace, not just between Israel and Palestinians, but also between Israel and Saudi Arabia's Sunni Muslims. 2 other countries recognize Jerusalem as the capital. The world, including China, is virtually united in not recognizing Israel's claim to Jerusalem as its undivided capital. One exception is the Pacific island of Vanuatu, which recognized it in May this year. Its late president, Baldwin Lonsdale, was an evangelical Christian who was described as having a strong connection to the Jewish people and to Israel. Taiwan also considers Jerusalem as Israel's capital. However, Israel does not even recognize Taiwan as a country. Russia's position is slightly ambiguous, but seems to leave room for the city to be Israel's capital in the event of a peace deal.